Hi, everybody. Happy Pride. My name is Morgan Auger, and I'm the founder of the Morgan Auger Foundation, which works to narrow the gap between Canada's human rights laws as they're written and the experience of people on the ground as they're susceptible to discrimination because the laws are imperfect. I'd like to wish you all happy Pride and express my gratitude to the organizers of North Island Pride for inviting me to participate and to be a part of this, and also to the sponsors, without whose help it would be impossible to have these events. I'm speaking to you today from Vancouver, where I live, and I'm mindful that this is the unceded territory of the Squamish and the Musqueam and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, whose permission was never sought to live and work on their territories. And, I do a lot of work talking about human rights and talking about equality and inclusion. And I'm mindful that Canada has a long ways to go before we are an example to others when it comes to how we treat all of our people. And we are one of the few countries that has a special discriminatory legislation in place to address the handling of a community. And the theme of North Island Pride is community. And I'm mindful that the Indian Act is an example of a place where we have so much more work to do in Canada to make sure that we treat everyone with the same respect and the same dignity that everyone else expects to be treated. So the theme of this pride is community, and I asked my children, "What is community to you?" And because I think we all have different ideas of what community means, they came back with examples of what community means. It's a place where you belong. It's a group of people with a common interest. It's a family or an extended family or tribe, whether it's a selected family, like a chosen family, like so many of us of diverse sexual orientation or gender identities have, or whether it's your biological family, the people you were born to, with whom you share genetics, bloodline, whether it's your family to which you were born or selected to be raised, so you're the people you were born to, or your parents that adopted you or that look after you, or your extended family, or whether it's groups with like-minded ideals, like, for example, your political family, or your gaming family, or your squad, or the neighbors down the part in your where you walk your dog that are part of your dog walking community. But something that they talked to me about that makes a lot of sense to me was that community was also what makes you strong and resilient, and that community looks after the people that need help. That community to them, and I share their view. Community is the thing that adds you resilience, and it helps you navigate the universe and our society, like if you're not going through it alone. So that when you are in need, then there's people that you can turn to, and when they are in need, they can turn to you. And I think I agree with that. Community is all of us in however we want to slice and dice everybody into to include the people that we care about into the same group. Community is also very helpful because it gets common voices and it gives us a chance to speak together about things that matter to us. For example, it's the Black communities in North America that brought to our attention this year all of the systemic discrimination and injustice that the BLM movement has been trying to get put to the forefront, to highlight how race and racialization is a systemic problem in Canada like it is in other countries, and that too many people like to pretend that we don't have this problem. The First Nations persons tell us about this as well, that we love to think that we are free of discrimination in Canada, yet we have the Indian Act that enshrines discrimination at the systemic level. Communities are the organizations that tell us when there's a problem. The LGBTQ2 plus communities that are made up of people of diverse sexual orientation or gender identities. These are our communities in this context where we're talking today. Even though we belong to many communities, I belong, for example, to the Francophone community. I belong to the community of moms and parents who have kids in school. I belong to the community of my neighborhoods. I participate in all kinds of community conversations that aren't related to place or identity, but simply are a common interest, like I mentioned before. And it's these organizations that bring, in my mind, the fabric of our society that can do so much good if we make sure it doesn't also do bad. There are sometimes some communities that are hoping to put themselves ahead of others, and maybe that's not such a good thing. That's a euphemism for that's a terrible thing, and we have to do everything we can to stop that. For example, there are those among us who believe that somehow they have a superior point of view, or they are inherently superior because they happen to belong to a culture that's identifiable. Canada's been doing a lot of work as a country to identify violent extreme right movements that are causing fear, and one of the ways that they cause fear is through the online hatred movements. And hatred online is a real problem, and I have a disproportionate amount of experience dealing with hatred, and so much of it is online, and that's a big problem. And I'm very encouraged to see that the federal government is taking measures, slowly but surely, to address hatred online. Many of us in the communities of diverse sexual orientation and gender identity, many of us have experienced people saying things about us that are untrue, that are based on disinformation that's put onto the internet, that is intended to cause harm. This myself, I experience this as a matter of routine, so it doesn't hurt my feelings as much as it hurts other people's feelings. But nonetheless, it's particularly searing to be vilified or to be demonized or to be pathologized because of who you are, and to have people justify amongst themselves or to the internet as a whole that you should be discriminated against because you're not like them. And I'm very happy to see that our federal government is acting on this. I was lucky enough to be a witness to the House of Commons Justice Committee on Human Rights and Equality, and I'm very pleased to say that this work is moving forward, and I'm going to be participating in some meetings next week to talk about this, and this is very important stuff. Some of the people who think that they're better than others, they pathologize, as I mentioned, people, and one of the issues there is something that's come back to the forefront because we were making strides getting that prohibited in Canada, and that's conversion therapy. And conversion therapy is basically an attack on the validity of a community, our LGBTQ2 plus community, by trying to tell us that who we are can be fixed somehow. That, for example, you could fix being transgender, or you can fix being gay or lesbian or bisexual. Like, apparently you could be fixed from being of Italian descent, or like me, of French descent. I was born in France. I could be fixed from liking croissants or from having a French accent when I speak, and I don't notice my accent so much. And this is outrageous, and this is damaging. And we know, actually, that conversion therapy causes great harm to people. And we know this as a community because members of our communities of various diverse gender identities or sexual orientations, people in our communities have been harmed by attempts to cause conversion therapy. And it's very good to see that the federal government put out Bill C-8 not so long ago, aimed to criminalize conversion therapy. And I hope that we all come out in support of this because this is stuff that targets us. And I would applaud a law where we have the prohibition in the criminal code of attempts to change the sexual orientation or gender identity of anybody, because it's just wrong. And it's based on the supremacist idea that someone's sexual orientation is better than someone else's, or we should fix sexual orientation or gender identity. And we know that this is terribly wrong and damaging, and when all of the evidence is there. And I vouch for the fact that conversion therapy is a problem today. I deal with 1 or 2 conversion therapy cases a year, and it's a huge problem that we have to resolve. And I very, very much hope to hear that our communities are engaging with their MPs and with other MLAs to bring to their attention how important it is to us to get hate propaganda under control in Canada and to get conversion therapy under control in Canada. At the provincial level, I think that I'd really like to see more services that are culturally appropriate for people of various gender identity or expressions. This is something that we still need a lot of work on. We need to make sure that we have no organizations providing services in our province that get away with arbitrarily declaring a subgroup within the demographic they serve as not being of that group enough. There used to be a time when lesbians and gays were allowed to be excluded from services for people because they were lesbians or gays. And today it's illegal to exclude people in British Columbia and in Canada because they're transgender or have diverse gender identities or expressions. And we need to stand together on this. This is very important. It's perfectly possible to provide any number of services for people without discriminating against them because of who they are. And when we need to handle some people differently because of their actions or because they pose certain risks, that's valid too. Organizations that are built for families don't necessarily have the infrastructure to support, let's say, some people with family members that are extremely difficult to work with because of maybe mental health issues or behavioral difficulties that make life very difficult. And addressing conduct is not the same as discriminating against people because of who they are. And that's where we have to draw the line, and we have to be vigilant about this. And we have to make sure that organizations hold everybody to the same standard. We don't discriminate because of because of who people are, whether that's in employment or in services. But nobody has the right to be a jerk and to be an awful, awful person when seeking services or when being hired. So there are always limits to conduct. And this is something that we have to allow for, because we also have to allow for, when we allow these barriers, we have to also ask ourselves, what are we going to do for the people in our communities that do have problems and are incapable of behaving according to the expectations? Because those people must still be included in our society and must not face discrimination on arbitrary grounds. And so if we provide a service that can only handle 90% of our population, whoever that is, we have to also create a service that can be built to be resilient for those 10% of our population or who are unable to live up to the requirements. This exists in housing, this exists in social services, it exists in transitional emergency services, it exists in hospitals. We have special services available for people who need special help, and we have to really look out for that. And finally, before I leave you, I'd like to share something that people who are much smarter than me shared with me about our communities and about what pride is. Let's not forget that pride was a protest. It's a celebration, but it was a protest. And in this protest, we asked and we demanded that we not be discriminated against because of who we are. And that matters with us as well. We have to not discriminate against others because of who they are, whoever they are, whoever other is. The idea of a working community, the greater community of our greater provincial society or our country or our community of countries, if we go even further, is that we do whatever we can to help each other along when it's possible to do so, and then we set aside services for the people who can't be helped by the mainstream services, and we really need to do that. It's very important that we leave nobody behind, and that does not ever include giving anybody a hall pass for misbehaving because they're trans, or because they're gay, or because they're indigenous, or because they're an immigrant, or because they're francophone like me. Protecting us from discrimination does not give us a hall pass to do whatever we want, whenever we want. We still live in a society, and that's the difficult part. But in a community, we know how to look out for the people who are vulnerable, who have difficulty. And that's what I love about the LGBTQ2 plus people and the society that of communities of diverse gender identities or expressions. We look after each other, and we do it in good, creative ways. Our response to COVID-19 has shown that. Our response to the hatred has shown that. We do a very good job of looking after each other, and we just need to keep on going. So I'm Morgan Auger, and thank you very much for listening to me today. To everybody in the North Island or wherever you are in British Columbia or further abroad, happy Pride. May this be a joyous Pride for you. And let's hope that next year we can do this in person. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.